that are city managed and publicly owned by the city of Englewood. That's about 2,700 trees. I can see a lot of data that y'all won't be able to see. We use it for management, but you'll be able to see tree species, tree size, and tree location. The latitude and longitude. You can see that sort of screen there on the right. A big part of our urban forest is safety. So we do risk assessments. My first week out here, I found that ash tree on the right, a huge crack, and that was right over a big sidewalk in Bellevue Park. It's like a 60-foot limb. And I found a great picture. That isn't of Englewood. That's what happens when a crack like that breaks. It just faults, rips right off the side of the tree. So doing hazard assessments of our park trees and our street trees, making sure that they're safe for everybody is really important. The first thing in our purpose is safe. Then there's maintenance, what most people think of when they think of arborists and foresters. Pruning, healthcare, removals. But another big part of it is soil improvement. So the soil has a lot to do with how healthy our trees are, what kind of trees we can grow, and where we can put trees. We might have open space, but for whatever reason, we can't put trees there because of the soil. So part of forest management is soil management as well. A big thing going on right now is emerald ash borer. Hopefully everybody's heard of this by now. You can see a little tiny emerald ash borer beetle there on the left. They're about the size of a penny. You can see the map on the right. It was found first in the US in the early 2000s in Canada and Michigan, and it spread all across. It's killed hundreds of millions of ash trees. But 2013, it was found in Boulder. And you can see that map, how it's spreading. And so Arvada 2020, it's most likely in Denver. It just hasn't been found yet. And it's coming to Englewood. So it has the potential to kill every single ash tree in Colorado. So we're working on a management program for that right now. Reforestation, this is a big one. So we have trees that die. We have a lot of old trees. You see the picture on the left. It's important that we're replacing these trees with new trees. So the reason we have all these great trees now is because somebody had the foresight to plant those 30, 40, 50, 60, 80 years ago, and we're reaping the benefits. So we want to make sure we're the ones planting the trees now for people 50 years from now. Planning. We're making sure that trees are part of the planning for the city, whether that's updating guidelines, looking at city code, looking at new developments in our parks, making sure that trees are protected and new trees are installed as part of these projects. And then doing outreach. Doing community events like the event this last Saturday, and also I had a chance to do a tree planting at an elementary school. This is me doing an activity with the kids where they're building a tree. You can't really see it. If we had a drone, that would be great. But see the kids at the bottom are the roots, and there's a trunk, and then there's the canopy, the leaves in the top. And it's an easy way to get kids to learn how trees work, how all plants work, and they get to be outside and yell and push each other and stuff. And then where we're going. So these are the things that we're working towards in the future. On our forest management, we're trying to improve our management practices, evolving, not just doing what we've always done, continuing to evolve and leveraging technology to help us evolve. Increasing our environmental health, so using trees to increase our health. Trees do a lot of things. People probably know about this already. Reduce stormwater runoff, capture water, something that we need here, sequester carbon, and clean our air. So we need to continue to manage our trees, but manage them to maximize the environmental benefits that they give us. Really put some emphasis on trees and public health. So there's a website called Healthy Trees, Healthy Lives. Has all the information, all the scientific studies about the way that trees and nature affect our physical and mental health. So we really need to start collaborating with healthcare and start looking at our trees and manage them to maximize their human health benefits. Doing more education, more awareness. So Project Learning Tree is already big nationwide. There's a big presence here in Colorado, something I've used in the past. The Build a Tree activity is a Project Learning Tree activity that I've used with kids all over the place. So continue to find avenues to reach out, not just to kids, to everybody about the benefits of trees and how trees help us and how they can help us with trees. Funding. So, costs are one thing that's always important when you're looking at any program. So we want to increase our funding for urban forestry, but how are we going to do that? We're going to start looking at different funding resources, not look at the same organizations, the same ways to get funding. That's when reaching out to new groups about human health, population health, looking for grant opportunities that are outside your traditional natural resources. And then social equity as well. So we want this to be part of our urban forestry program, making sure that everybody has access to the urban forest. Make sure the benefits that our trees give us are giving those benefits to all of us, not just those select few that live in areas that have dense forest canopy. And it's just the short and sweet of it, but that's what I've got. So I would like to open it up and answer any questions anybody has about trees, forestry, and what we're doing here in Englewood.
I can kick us off.
All right.
I'm sure I don't want to monopolize the time. I see Mike's got his hand raised too. Mike, I saw that.
Okay.
Talk to me about maintenance challenges. What's holding you back from doing everything that you want to do? Is it funding? Is it manpower? Is it just too much to do in a certain amount of time? What's tying your hands?
So one of the biggest things is that you have 2,700 trees and you have a park staff that is already overworked. They're managing all the facilities, all the restrooms, all the grounds maintenance of the parks. And then there's a group that also does tree care. So my position is new with the city. I've been here for, I think, 5 weeks now. So I'll be helping with maintenance and planning and adding a lending hand. But when you have 2,700 trees, you can't be everywhere at once. So the biggest thing is just prioritizing time and making sure that you have those resources allocated in the right spots, that you're not wasting time and money here and there, because the parks crew is running 100 miles an hour every day. So
Where can we help? I mean, are there volunteer opportunities like tree planting? How can we get involved and push manpower toward you or resources?
So I think that's something about just me and the Parks and Rec team collaborating with this group. When we see those opportunities, that we have somebody that we can reach out to. So when we have a big tree planting event, or no matter what it is, like next year we're going to be doing a much bigger Arbor Day. So I would love this group to be part of not just going out there and putting a tree in the ground, but helping to organize it, helping to get boots on the ground out there. So there's nothing worse than a tree planting when you have 50 trees and 6 people show up. It's better when you have an Arbor Day and you have 12 trees and 100 people show up.
Yeah.
And that's really what I want. So spread the wealth of planning and really engaging the community about what we need to do. So whether that's mulching or maintenance or tree planting or even something simple as a citizen forester program, which is really common. So like our tree inventory, people can go out to parks and look at the tree inventory and start learning how to identify trees, and eventually get to the point where they can input tree data for us. They can find errors for us. Because doing 2,700 trees every year is very time consuming for one person.
That's really helpful. One thing I would like to see this commission prioritize is public education. So any efforts that we can collaborate with, please pitch them to Mel, me.
Yeah.
We'd love to work with you on that.
That's gonna be a big one. So.
I hope it'll be a quick answer, and then I'll quit talking. And your job title is urban forester. What's the average lifespan of a tree in an urban setting like Denver as opposed to a rural setting?
So it's sort of, there's a lot of different research that shows the average lifespan of a tree. The one that I use and all people use is in an urban setting, the average lifespan of a tree is 7 years.
Wow.
So just like a lot of wild populations of anything, whether you're looking at mice or birds or grasshoppers or whatever, you have huge mortality in year 1. So you go out and do a tree planting, there's a good chance you're going to lose half the trees due to weather, vandalism, damage, no matter what it is. And that's why it's so low. Because you are going to have trees that live for 100 years, but you're going to have trees that live for 1 month as well. So when those average out, you plant 50 trees and 10 die in 1 year. Your life expectancy for everything just plummeted. And that's, that's part of growing trees. We can't plant an acorn in the park. It's not going to make it. So we have to plant larger trees, which has more maintenance, more water requirements, and more transplant shock. So.
Thanks, Evan.
Yep.
We can popcorn it. Mike, I saw you had your hand raised.
Yeah, Evan, thanks. I had a question. If there's 2,700 trees right now in the city parks, is the goal to increase that number by X% a year over the next 5 years? Or is it to just hold on to the 2,700 and replace and repair as needed? What's the plan? What's the future? What's the goal?
That is a great question. So right now, I'm re-inventorying every single park and city managed tree. So we'll know exactly where we're at by the end of the summer. But I would think the goal, from what I've seen of the parks, most of them are forested pretty nice. It would be great to have every park covered in trees, but then we would have no grass. So there has to be a balancing act. So instead of number of trees, an important indicator we need to look at in the future is canopy coverage. Because you can have 50 juniper trees that don't even have the same canopy coverage as one elm tree. So once we have the inventory complete, and then we can look at doing a canopy coverage survey, not just for our parks, but also for the whole city. And then let's say we have a threshold, right now we're at 40%, 20%, and we know where we stand, and then we can see where our gaps are and where we need to increase canopy coverage. And maybe in those spots we already have young trees where we don't need to plant anymore. We just need to make sure those survive and grow. So number of trees is important, but your canopy coverage is probably a better performance indicator than total number of trees. But yeah, I definitely don't want to start getting down to where we have like 2,000 trees. I don't think that would be healthy at all. So I would like to maintain our numbers for sure.
Okay.
Why is canopy coverage a better measure? Is it just for shade and beauty, or is it also more canopy coverage means more carbon sequestration?
Yeah, so canopy coverage, if a tree that covers more canopy is going to be bigger, just in general, just from the way trees grow. So one of the big benefits that trees give us is air filtration, storm water catch, and then also just cooling the ground, shading parking lots, shading roads, shading the soil. So the more coverage you have, the more benefits you're getting from those trees. Like I said, you can have 50 juniper trees and they're giving us a lot of benefit. They're not giving us the same amount of benefit as one large tree or 2 large trees. So that's really where they really start to help us out. So.
What's your favorite tree in town?
I haven't seen them all yet, but there's 2 really big elm trees at Duncan Park And so far, those are my favorites, because the park is relatively new, and there's not a lot of big trees in that park yet. But yet there's these two massive American elm trees that are right there.
Do you have problems with elm beetles?
Yeah, so they all suffer from it.
So what do you do to
Well, when
maintain those trees?
you have to look at sort of your threshold. You could treat them every year and never have them, but is it worth the cost and money? A lot of pests are just natural. So those pests are part of the ecosystem as much as the tree is. If it gets to a point where it's starting to hurt the tree, we can apply certain products to decrease the numbers of those. But going out and treating every single elm tree with a pesticide isn't the most sustainable or environmentally friendly management effort, but.
What are you planting most of these days?
We're planting everything. So we're creating a list of our preferred tree species that we're going to have out soon, and we want all of those trees. We want coffee tree. We want different kinds of oaks. We want locust. We want everything because we want our urban forest to be diverse and resilient. So there's something called the 10-20-30 rule about how many different number of species, genus, and family of trees you have in an urban forest. So we don't want to ever have more than 10% of the same species, 20% the same genus, 30% the same family. So it's one of these problems like emerald ash borer, Dutch elm disease. We don't want these, something could show up 10 years from now that kills every single honey locust. And then we don't want 50% of our forest to be honey locust. So we're planting every single tree we can get our hands on.
Are you avoiding any trees because of like the ash borer?
Yeah, so ash is off the table and probably is going to be off the table for decades, if not generations. And then there's other trees like box elder that, there's certain trees that we're not planting because they pose certain problems. Things like aspen and different poplar species we're avoiding just due to the maintenance issues that they have. We're looking for trees that provide us like the maximizing our benefits, minimizing our maintenance. So, but that list is large. We're talking 20, 30 different tree species, and we're trying to plant them all.
Like that?
Will that list prioritize low water trees or native trees?
It probably won't prioritize the native trees, because if we only planted native trees, we would have all kind of the same thing.
Sure.
So like we're not planting cottonwoods, and we are trying to plant blue spruce, but they have a lot of issues adapting to the urban environment. They have higher water needs than some of the trees we're bringing in. Even like green ash is not a native tree. So most of our trees are brought in from somewhere else. Because go back 200 years, this is all prairie.
Right.
There's only cottonwoods here, so we had to bring in trees.
Okay, and what about low water then?
Yeah, so that's part of being resilient, trying to combat climate change with our trees. So we want trees that are drought tolerant. We want trees that are drought resistant. We want trees that are heat resistant. But also, they need to be cold resistant. You just can't start bringing trees from Florida here because they wouldn't make it. So yeah, there's a niche that we have, and we're lucky to be in a band of the country where a lot of people are dealing with these same problems. So the palette we have for trees is large and getting larger as people are doing research, bringing in new trees, plant one, let's see if this works here. Oh, no, it dies in the cold. You might try it again. And if it dies again, then you cross it off the list. That's the cool thing about bringing in new tree species, finding what works best here.
Then one more question on that line, if I can. Are those guidelines going to be fed into the annual tree sale that Englewood does? And are you involved at all in that tree sale?
Yeah, it happened right before I started. It had just finished. But yeah, all 65 trees were sold this year. And they're coming from a select list of trees that we're picking out. You can't just get any tree you want in this area. So like one tree I thought was really cool is Eastern Redbud. So like I'm from Texas, and that's a native tree that we have in Texas. You see them everywhere. This time of year, the forest is just pink with flowers everywhere. So it's really cool to see that tree now being planted. That's what we planted with the kindergartners, was in Eastern Redbud. So.
Yeah, is there any effort being made by the city to try to convince or help private campuses keep some of the larger trees? And what are the challenges to that?
Yeah, so for us at Parks and Rec, like our budget is spent on the city. So we don't have funding to give to private citizens or funding for people that aren't dealing with city managed trees. But as far as like collaboration with other cities, especially with Emerald Ash Borer, you see it's coming like a wave. So speaking with people in Littleton, Sheridan, Denver, you know, working together with them, because we're all dealing with the same problems. But most places, whether you're a city or an entity, usually have somebody that's taking care of those trees. And if you don't, I always tell people it just costs money. You just hire somebody to do that for you. But with our department, we only deal with public-owned city-managed trees.
Okay.
Yep.
I was wondering if you could expand on like the social equity focus and like what's being done and what do you hope to do in the future?
Yeah, so right now, what we're looking at is identifying parts of Englewood that have low canopy coverage. Because there's one of these things that there's data that shows that tree canopy is correlated with crime. Tree canopy is correlated with infant mortality. Tree canopy is also correlated with property values and wealth. Wealthier neighborhoods have tree canopy, poorer neighborhoods don't. So what we can do is we can look at areas in Englewood that have low canopy coverage. Now, we aren't going to go plant trees in somebody's front yard, but we can engage with citizens to tell them how important trees are, and they can buy trees through our tree sale program or go out and buy their own tree through another organization to put in their front yard. And we can make sure that our parks and city managed land in those areas are forested and are taken care of and aren't neglected. So that's really what we're looking at, doing what we can on our own property, but also making sure that the residents of those areas are educated to the point where they know the importance of trees and that they can grow their own trees and we can help them get access to those trees.
Are there opportunities for like subsidized trees for some of these like low income?
So that's kind of the tree sale program is subsidized.
Okay.
So the trees are $35. They're a lot more than that if you go over to the nursery and buy them. And we really want to expand that program and possibly next year do a tree giveaway where we can buy small bare root trees that are very cheap and then people can order them from us. We're not just going to go to the grocery store and hand them out, but have somewhere where people that maybe can't go buy a tree, can't pay $35 for a big tree, but they can get a small tree from us for free. That's something we're looking at next year. Like I said, we're just trying to make sure that the trees are going to be accessible for everybody.
Mike?
Yeah, a quick question, Evan. Is there any thought or opportunity with potted trees? I'm talking fairly large pots and medium-sized trees. You see it in upscale shopping centers, plazas. I know Englewood's talking, about redevelopment downtown. And I don't know if it's even possible, but I've always thought, wouldn't it be cool if those could be worked into the succession planning? Could a park or a neighborhood or a corner have a potted tree for 2 or 3 years with the understanding this is going to go to Cushing Park in 3 years and be planted as a permanent tree? Is that just a pipe dream, or is that possible, or is there any thinking along those lines?
I think I would love to see people, you're talking about somebody that sort of takes care of a tree and then later on in the life of that tree, it gets planted in a park. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, particularly a neighborhood. if a neighborhood said, we have a corner, or we have an area of the park, or we have an area that we just want to see some greenery, can we babysit a tree for a couple years? And it's big enough that somebody's not going to come in and pick it up and take it. But it also is in a succession that that tree isn't going to be killed in 2 years either. But I live in a neighborhood where we have interest in possibly an interim beautification program. And again, these are just ideas. I don't know what's possible, but is that possible? And could the city open the doors for those kinds of opportunities?
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to like the parks, whenever we are gonna put a tree in, we just go get one. We have a small tree nursery over at the golf course. And we have one of those big tree spades that pulls them right out of the ground and puts it in the ground. So we don't really, it would be great if people were growing trees for us, but we don't really need it. We have the resources. When we need a tree, we plan ahead and, we go out and we source the tree or grow the tree ourselves and then put it in the ground. As far as, maybe if I understand what you're talking about, is having like a tree in a pot in the ground temporarily and then pulling it out later. Is that what you're talking about?
Either or. Englewood has orphaned lots. They have parking lots and corners that are full of blacktop. They're heat sinks. There's all kinds of issues. We can't plant a permanent tree. We can't do this. Could we put some potted trees on those heat sinks, even if it's a temporary green space? That's the idea. And in the Cushing Park neighborhood, that's what we're looking at. But we don't even know if that's realistic. But yeah, a temporary tree in a pot in a spot that is currently a heat sink.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting idea. It would be something there's a lot of logistics to it about maintenance and sourcing it and moving it and all those things.
Sure.
But I think it's an interesting idea when you have these areas, like you said, where you can install, like I said, maybe like a portable tree. Think of it as like a big living umbrella.
That's exactly that's the concept.
Yeah, and it is common in a lot of cities. They have trees in these huge concrete containers. And if they need to, they just come in with a huge piece of machinery and just pick them up and move them and do their work and then put them back. Or you have a big parade, you just move them all and then you can put them back. But they also weigh like 2-3 tons.
Yeah. Okay,
So,
well, thanks. Like I said, it's just an idea. I didn't know how feasible it was, but it sounds like it's possible.
yeah, the feasibility is yet to be known, but possible, yes. It's a very cool idea, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Christine?
Yeah, I have follow-up questions to what you were asking, kind of along those lines. About equity and tree coverage in some parts of Englewood that have fewer trees. I had seen a few years ago that Denver, for their tree sale, had said if you're in one of these specific areas that has low tree coverage, you could get a free tree. Otherwise, you'd pay more. Is that kind of what you were thinking that we might be able to do? Because that seemed like a pretty good idea.
I think one of the biggest differences between Englewood and Denver is that when you go through most neighborhoods in Denver, they have street trees. So the trees that are in between the sidewalk and the road, you just don't really have that in Englewood. So in Denver, if you have a house and you have a big tree that's in between the sidewalk and the street, what we call a street tree, it's your responsibility to maintain it. Now, if that tree dies and it needs to be removed or it breaks in a storm, the city wants you to replant that tree, and they want to incentivize people to replant trees in those strips. I think a lot of those trees that they're giving out are not for people's backyards. I think they're for the street tree, the median strip. But here it would be initially just getting trees out. And from some of the canopy coverage I've looked at in Englewood, the big spots where we have no canopy coverage, there's reasons for it. It's industrial land. It's shopping centers. It's roadways. Most of Englewood has decent canopy coverage, and if it doesn't, there's usually a reason for it. whether it's a sports field or something like that, or these large industrial areas. Obviously, we're not gonna get them to plant trees in there because they don't want them there. But we need to find, the canopy surveys that I've seen so far, they're really large scale. We need one that's on a much finer scale where we can look block by block, which blocks. So
Right.
there's a group I've worked with in the past and they just drive around. And if they see a house without a tree, they go put a flyer on the door. This is it as a nonprofit, it's not the city doing it. And they say, hey, you need a tree, contact us.
What's the nonprofit?
Tree Folks
That's awesome.
in Austin, Texas. And that's just what they do. So their goal is to get trees in the ground. Now, they're a nonprofit, so they can do those things. I'm not advocating that I'm gonna be going knocking on people's doors and giving them a tree. But we wanna advertise that trees are out there for people that want one.
How can we get the word out to those households in England that don't have a tree, but maybe
That's the $1 million question.
use one?
Because a lot of times, the people that don't have the trees are the hardest people to get in touch with. So that's where we're working with communications. We're working with different departments in the city to figure out how to reach out to these groups. And I think that's where working with children is really important, because if you can catch people's kids, get them the tree. I know when I was a kid, we would go and recycle our Christmas tree and they'd hand you a little tree. They always hand it to the kid. They don't hand it to the parent, they hand it to the kid, because the kid wants to plant it. Those trees never lived for us, but it was cool as a kid to put them in the ground. So yeah, it's gonna be hard to get people to put trees in the ground, but we're gonna give it a shot. So.
Is there anything sort of related to that for resources or information about then how do you take care of those trees, maintenance?
Yeah.
Because any of us who have those big trees, those costs, it cuts a lot of money. So is there anything out there as far as resources or even just information?
Yeah, it's real simple. So next year when we're hoping to do this, every tree will come with a little tag. And the tag will say what you need to do and what you don't need to do. So I think from my experience, one of the biggest killers of trees is the tree owner, because they're doing things, it's like anything. A doctor is not going to tell you to go Google how to treat yourself. And an arborist isn't going to tell you to Google how to take care of your tree.
Yeah.
So people over-fertilize, they add the wrong chemicals, they overwater, they underwater, they bad pruning practices, but they have the best intentions, but they're overdoing it. They'll be, well, trees were here millions of years before us, they'll be here millions of years after us. They know what they're doing. So yeah, we can have a little packet, just something really short, how to water your tree, how to take care of it, basic tree care steps.
I'd love to maybe help you put that together if there's an opportunity.
Yeah.
Or at least take a look at it and provide feedback.
Yeah.
I love the idea.
Yeah.
And I know you can only fit so much on a pamphlet or a card. You could always do a QR code and link off.
Yeah, QR code and just little graphics,
Totally.
how to water.
Yeah. Real quick, it's almost 7:15. I think the conversation's flowing fairly well. I think we can stay on this for a few more minutes if that's okay with you, Evan, if you've got time.
I'm here as long as you need me.
Great. And then we can transition to some more nitty gritty. With that, I have a question about the emerald ash borer. There's a program in Greeley, I believe. It's a residential treatment program. They tout upwards of 40% cost savings for the city. You know, the resident who has an ash pays the city to come treat the tree. Can you talk a little bit about that program, or if there's any interest of having that sort of program in the pipeline for Englewood?
That's a great question. I was going to do my spiel at the very end before I left.
We can save it.
Yeah, no, it's great to do it now. So one of the programs that we're doing for emerald ash borer is we also have something we're calling the Eav Subsidy Program. So any resident in Englewood, if they have an ash tree that they would like to treat or remove, because some of the trees, ash trees, they just need to be removed. It's not going to be feasible to treat them every year. They're rotten, they're dying, they're in a bad place under your power line. And this program will cover 25% of the cost, up to $500 of treatment or removal. So we've already had a handful. It just went live 2 weeks ago, and we've already had a handful approved. And so 25%, it's still gonna cost you some money, but it's, you know, treating a big tree can be $300. You have to do that every 2 years until there's no more emerald ash borer, which in the Midwest, it's been 20 years now of emerald ash borer. It's not going away. So we haven't had a removal yet, but there's gonna be a tree that people say, I just wanna get this tree out of here. We'll cover up to $500, 25% of the cost.
How much again? Up to what percent?
It's 25% of the cost, up to $500.
Okay.
So I tell everybody I talk to your neighbors, look at your trees. We're even wrapping trees in the parks. You might see some plastic wrap about protecting ash trees. We're putting around ash trees in the park. In the parks, we're treating our trees, the ones that are gonna stay. Not all of them are staying. To ensure that those trees are still there providing benefits. We wanna make sure that the citizens and the private trees in Englewood are also protected or removed. Because the last thing we want, emerald ash borer to show up and suddenly there's 10,000 dead ash trees across the city. And the city trees are fine because we're managing them. But imagine the cost that private citizens are gonna have to incur. And what happens in every disaster, price of everything goes up because there's gonna be such high demand to remove trees that tree companies can basically charge whatever they want. And
What percent of our trees are ash trees?
so in our parks, we don't have a private tree inventory, but in the parks, it's just under 13% of all the trees, 328.
Okay.
We had a canopy survey for the Denver metro area in 2013. It estimated there's 150,000 trees in all of Englewood. And typically you have about 15% ash in the front range. 15%. So we're looking at up to 20,000 ash trees in Englewood. That's not just trees in people's yards. That's trees by the river, that's trees by the creeks and the green belts, the areas that are unmaintained. There's ash trees out there too because it's escaped cultivation. So, you know, emerald ash borer, it's hard to, unless you're from the Midwest or the East, like coast or Northeast, and you've seen the devastation that emerald ash borer does, it's hard, it's like a wildfire. There's streets in Toledo, every single ash tree, 100 years old, 100 feet tall, blocks all ash trees. In 2 years, they're all gone. And you have zero canopy coverage. You go from 80% canopy coverage to zero in 2-3 years. It's not gonna be that bad here. That's what's gonna happen. Like if you don't treat your tree, over the next 20 years, it will be killed by emerald ash borer. And it's hard to tell people that and have them comprehend it unless you've seen it. So the best analogy is a wildfire.
Yeah.
After the wildfire, there's nothing left. And that's what's gonna happen to ash. All our other trees will be fine. Emerald ash borer doesn't like them. So it's really important that people either treat their trees or remove their ash trees.
So you're using the term treatment synonymously with prevention, is that correct?
Yeah, so-
Because it's not currently here and
It's not confirmed here.
Not confirmed here.
It could easily be across the street. We just haven't found it.
and once there's an infestation, there's no way to cure.
No, so basically the beetle, it'll fly, the female will lay eggs on the crevice of the tree, and then they hatch and the little larvae go inside the tree. They start eating the phloem and the cambium inside the tree. Year 1, you won't see anything. There could be hundreds of larvae inside the tree. Year 2, there could be 1,000 larvae in the tree. You might see a little bit of a branch start to die or wilt. Well, maybe that's just drought, right? Year 3, tree's dead. So by the time you see the beetles exiting, they'll bore out of the tree. And you'll see them flying around, and there's tens of thousands of them flying around everywhere. All the trees are already dead. because they're inside the tree. So that's why we treat. The adult flies around and it eats the leaves of the ash tree. Well, when you treat a tree systemically, basically the leaves become poisonous. The adults eat the leaves, they die. The larvae go inside the tree, they die. So it controls them.
How
Without
long
that,
does that last, the treatment?
there's different types of treatments. One will last for 1 year, if they do every single year. There's an injectable product that will last for 2 years.
Okay.
But you have to do it every 2 years. So like in the Midwest, there's people that maybe treated their tree for 10 years and then they forgot or sold their property and the new homeowner came in, didn't know about it. Trees are dead.
Okay.
So all of that thousands of dollars spent treating those trees was good. The tree stayed alive, but it doesn't prevent future infestation, only for that treatment period.
So that makes me have two other follow-up questions, because you got us all worried. Of course, we knew it was a problem to start with. Besides treatment and education, what can we do to increase the number of other trees so that when we do lose potentially all our ash, we kind of don't have such devastation? I was wondering, could we have a larger tree sale each year? Because you said you sold out of the 65. And then I was wondering, could we plant some more in the parks? Because when I was looking around, there's some trees, but there is a lot of grass.
Yeah, so that's normally on purpose, because trees and grass, you go to the forest, you don't see grass. You go to the prairie, you don't see trees. Trees and grass do not get along. They're both competing in the same top layer of the soil. So, and the grass is like the rabbit and the trees are the tortoise, right? So the grass moves faster, it grows faster, it'll suck up all the water and all the nutrients faster. They don't like being around each other. Also, trees will shade out the grass. So you have to have a balance in the parks of trees and grass. We can't just have all trees.
Mm-hmm.
So when we have ash trees, we're treating them to keep them alive. But in the spots near those trees, we're putting new trees now, because we know those trees are going to be removed at some point in the future.
Okay.
So we're letting those trees, but you also can't put a tree under a tree, because
Right.
that tree needs light as well. So there's a balance that has to take place between reforestation. You can't just put them anywhere. They have to have a very specific spot where they're far enough away from everything. They're still in a good spot. They can grow there, but they're not impeded. They're not impeded by the big trees around them.
Mhm.
So that's why we're focusing on treating our ash trees, the good ones, taking out the bad ones. So something that, like a saying is, treat the best, get rid of the rest. That's how you deal with emerald ash borer. You keep your good ones. You maximize your benefits from those trees. But the bad ones that are liabilities because of damage or disease, you get rid of them now, because they're not worth treating and spending hundreds of dollars on every year. So you get rid of them, and boom, put your new tree in right now.
Yep.
But we're not clear cutting the parks of all the ash. We're taking out select few over the next decade, 20 years. They'll slowly all be removed or die. But we have to get those new trees in now. So yeah, but the tree sale is going to be part of that. We want an expanded tree sale, not just for emerald ash borer, but for our tree canopy.
Right.
But when it comes here, it's gonna be bad.
So you really think, sorry,
I was just gonna say, the city's not likely using this, but there's the Arbor Day Foundation. You can give a $10 donation and get 10 trees. They're not very big, but if you're worried about your ash tree, you can try a couple just outside the shade and see how it does.
Yeah. Or what I tell people all the time, like we talked about, finish it before, put them in a pot. Get a big pot and put them somewhere that has a lot of sunshine. Grow your tree really big. And then if you have that ash tree you're worried about, or any tree you're worried about, that you already have a tree that can go right there. It's like a movable tree. And like Arbor Day Foundation is great. Arbor Day Foundation is a great organization, but I normally tell people not to always get the trees in that sale, because if you're in a really sort of normal environment, that's fine. But we're in an environment where we want trees that are for here. So let's say you get a Shumard oak from Arbor Day. Well, Shumard oak grows in Texas, it grows in Florida, it grows in Virginia, it grows in Michigan, it grows in Colorado. What's the genetics that you're getting? You don't know. We want the genetics that are gonna grow best here. So just like trees, just like animals, they're bred different things, same species. You know, dogs are all the same, but a husky's not gonna do great, you know, in Guatemala.
Yeah.
You know, so you want the tree that has the right genetics. So the trees that we're gonna get are gonna have that right genetics. They're gonna be genetic stock that's gonna be the best for here. Like I said, the most drought tolerant, heat resistant of that species. But yeah, I'm never gonna tell anybody not to donate money to the Arbor Day Foundation. You definitely should. But our tree giveaway will be very similar to that. Smaller trees, bare root, and they'll be very, very cheap.
Thanks, Evan. Unless there's any questions online, we might take one more, but we've had Evan for just under an hour. And to be cognizant of his time and ours, we have an agenda after this. Maybe take one more question and then we'll let him go on his way. Or you can hang out with us, whatever you want to do.
I had a comment, I heard a neat anecdote about another city for their anniversary of their city, like 200th anniversary. They planted a tree for every baby born in the city that lived, of a family that lived there. And they put a little note at the bottom of the tree for the baby's name. And then as you grow up, as the family grows up, they know that they're a part of that community. I thought that was so neat. It was on the outskirts of a big park there.
I think that's a great thing about tree planting, especially in public spaces, is having trees that people can connect with. That it's not just like, oh, that's the tree and you lock your bike up to it or whatever, that they're treated with respect. And a lot of times when they're a memorial tree or planted for a specific thing, and they're normally cared after a little bit more. Like memorial trees probably have a much higher survival rate than your average park tree because they're watched after. And it'd be great to do that for every tree, but obviously we can't.
That's fascinating. I have one closing comment or question. I want us to be a resource to the community. And so we weren't able to answer, I don't know, I'm trying to phrase that. How can we point Ivan in the right direction to his question regarding privately cared for urban forestry? Whose jurisdiction, you're at DU?
Yeah.
Whose jurisdiction who oversees the DU forestry? Can we try and point him in the right direction, or is that something I can follow with him directly?
I mean, so I came here from a university. And so almost every university, they have grounds staff. DU, I don't know them, but I would say they have an arborist.
Yeah.
They have probably multiple arborists for a campus like that. So reach out to the facilities department.
Okay.
Who's taking care of the trees? Are we a tree campus higher education? That's a designation, like Inglewood is a Tree City USA. It used to be called Tree Campus USA, now it's Tree Campus Higher Education. So that's what I did for our university before. And if they are one, there are certain standards and guidelines they have to have. So you can reach out to them and so I guarantee you that DU is taking care of their trees.
Yeah.
So anybody from a hospital to a college to a school to a shopping mall, there's somebody taking care of the trees. So.
Yeah, let us know how we can help be a resource.
Yeah, no, yeah, absolutely, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
It was just more of a question about, you know, I guess that kind of got answered with the equity question.
Yeah.
About like, you know, certain private owners, how the city can help private owners maintain their trees, but you had
there's nonprofit and professional groups. So the city obviously doesn't get involved in that, but you have a group called International Society of Arboriculture who certifies arborists. They have chapters all across the world. There's a Rocky Mountain chapter that's actually based here in Denver. That's a group you can reach out. Trees for Colorado. There's tons of nonprofits out there, and that's really the sector where they thrive. Is we have a tree problem we're a private entity or something, how do we get help? And they can point you in the right direction.
Right.
So.
Thank you.
Evan, thanks. This was fascinating. Great conversation. I learned a lot. I think we had great questions from the group and you answered everything. Thanks. You'll be a resource for us going forward.
Yeah, I really appreciate it, and feel free to contact me, E. Anderson, EnglewoodCO.gov, about any tree-related issue. If it's like a private issue, I'm gonna pawn you off to somebody else that deals with those.
Sure.
But if it's something that's in our realm, in our sphere of influence, I'll help out any way that I can,
Right.
especially for this group. And talking with Mel, I think it was like my first week or something, really working together with this group, because there is a Parks and Rec Commission as well, but that covers a lot of other parts of forestry. And this is another side of forestry that really needs to be looked at, not just forestry, but parks in general.
Yep, there were a number of opportunities for collaboration. I think I noted and I saw you taking notes. So we'll continue to cross paths.
I look forward to working with y'all.
Great.
Thanks,
So,
Evan.
Thanks, Evan.
Thank you.
Really appreciate that.
Is yours a new position in Englewood or just you in particular?
Yep. So my boss is technically the city forester. He has lots of other duties
Right.
as well. So yeah, I don't think the city's had an arborist or forester in like 30, 40 years.
Cool.
So it's
That's exciting.
very cool, and I'm very happy to be here. Like I
Yes.
said, I'm really looking forward to working with everybody.
Nice to meet you, Evan.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Let's jump into voting items. We've got 3 on the agenda. And we will start with commission financials and an events budget overview that Mel's going to kick off. And then we'll need to vote toward the end of that, and then we'll move on to the next item. Mel, all you.
Yeah, I feel bad that we go from the fun stuff to financials. But so everything on the rest of the agenda, it really is just follow up from the last meeting of questions. One of the ones was around financials and budget. What does the Sustainability Commission budget look like? So hopefully you all saw the budget that I sent, and also just so you know, this is always available to the public. So in 2023, if you're like, what is the Sustainability Commission budget? You can always go online and you can always look at this. This is always readily available for you. So I'm sure the first thing that everyone saw when I sent it out was this $74,000 number because it's quite large. I had a lot of meetings with Will Charles, who was the past commission staff liaison back when this was Keep Englewood Beautiful, to really kind of dive in like what this meant and what the past funding was. So I'm going to flip between kind of 2 screens while I talk. Hopefully that's okay.
Can you make this full screen for the
Yes,
folks online?
yeah,
And
yeah.
for me?
No, absolutely.
Thank you.
Does that work for everyone?
Yep.
Okay. So this past spending was provided by Will. And so this is addressing that $74,000 that's budgeted for 2022. So that is for the leaf recycling event and the hazardous waste recycling event, which this commission, I believe, spearheaded and has done for the past many, many years. It's that high price point because for the hazardous waste recycling event, we cover the initial cost, and it's between Englewood and Littleton. We cover that initial cost, and then after the event, they pay us what they owe us for that event. And then also we get co-pays from what people provide. All that money is then after put into the general fund. So this 74th, oh, it not let me. Here we go. So that $74,000 is slotted for that event. So that is something that you all at some point tonight will vote on, is if you want to continue on with these events, you by no means have to. And if you don't continue on with the events, it's not like the commission gets to keep that $74,000 because it was slated for these events. So if it is decided no, then we would go to a different department in the city, see if they wanted to host them, and then go to city council to see if they would approve moving that money to whatever department takes it up if they decided to take that up.
So the ask is just to host the event.
Yep, so the ask is to host the event. It was budgeted by city council, but again, you all do not have to if you don't want to continue on with it, but those funds will not be readily available.
Mel, do you know if it was well tended, seems to be the wrong term, did we dispose of a lot of hazardous waste?
So from what I can tell, and I will say I've gotten a lot of phone calls from both Littleton and Englewood residents in the past few weeks wondering when this event will be. It seems to be very popular. I wasn't at any past events. I don't know, Logan, you said you were?
I was.
Would you say it was pretty popular?
Steady, yep, all
Yeah.
day. Mike was there with me. Most of these events. Rachel, I see you're off mute.
Sorry. Go ahead. I'm wondering if there's a potential to like co-host them. I think they're good events, but I think it is a big burden just in terms of getting volunteers, and it's like a struggle every year. And it's like, for example, the leaf recycling, it's physically taxing and it's a long day. So I'm wondering if there's an option to like co-host, or what your guys' thoughts are on that.
Yeah, Rachel, I'm really glad you brought that up actually, because the issue of volunteers was brought up to me before. We do have kind of a roster of volunteers at the city. Tony Arnaldi, the events coordinator who spoke with us a few months ago, we can dive into those volunteers, and that's really what should be happening going forward. So if you all do approve of this event, it's not saying that you all have to be there. We should have volunteers adequate enough to be at these events, and it should not be burdened on you all to carry that weight.
Mike?
Yeah, I don't see any reason or value of running the money through the Sustainability Commission. It's just a conduit. It seems like, you know, it's implied then that the Sustainability Commission is going to come up with the volunteers. I think those projects are great. I think the LEAF project's great, hazardous waste recycling. I don't think the city has to run the money through us. I think it should be, the city should pay for it like they always do. And I think volunteers should volunteer. And if people on the Sustainability Commission want to volunteer, that's fine. But I don't see any reason why that money flows through our commission.
I believe, and I can follow up on this, I believe it originally flowed through the commission because KEB spearheaded the initiative. I believe that's the case. Joe, do you know that?
It's been going on a long time,
For a
so I
long time.
don't, pre my time, that was started.
It sounds like correct me where I'm wrong. It sounds like it's a multi-city event run by city staff. So I think I would echo, if we're correct in our assumption, why is the money run through us? Do we need, can it just be another city-run event where we can come step in and help with outreach if necessary, or public education, or raising awareness? Maybe that's more of a role that we could play, as opposed to, you know, funneling the money through us for a reason I can't quite wrap my head around. But
Yeah, and that's definitely, so if you all do vote no, again, that money would just pen there. It would be, depending on the event, if another department picks it up, and that has to deal with capacity, because I have no idea what the capacity and staff looks like in the other departments. So there's just no guarantee, but there's also no for sure that they wouldn't pick it up either.
I guess my question is, why does it need to be run by a border commission? Are all city events run by a very certain border commission?
No, I believe the other events, like the one that Tony has for Celebrate Englewood, I believe that's through her.
This would be, I mean, I would see this a little different, that it's a volunteer event. The city doesn't have a volunteer coordinator. Right now, that's something I think we, you know, at some point we need to hire somebody to volunteer and oversee volunteer events. Most of the events that Tony runs are entertainment, you know, more entertainment oriented, or, you know, introducing people to the city, like the event last Saturday by the police station, the Celebrating Wood event.
For sure.
So my guess is that Mel's right, that this was originally some initiative that that the commission started, but I think it's a valid concern. If this is dropped, is anybody going to pick it up? I don't think that's a reason to vote, to vote yes on. Don't keep doing it just because we've always done it. But to, the way I would frame the question is, what is the best use of resources of the Sustainability Commission's time and energy and efforts? Is doing that event the best use of those resources? KB said yes. Is the Sustainability Commission going to say yes to that? And is it a top priority for the Sustainability Commission? So.
Or the option that Rachel brought up about possibly co-hosting. I don't know how that.
Yeah, if there was somebody
like.
willing to co-host, I mean, I'm trying to think if there's another commission that would do it, or if we're gonna, have Tony oversee the event. I mean, that doesn't fit into her current schedule and plan for the year. So I don't, like you're kind of hoping somebody co-hosts it at that point, or and it may not happen. And so then would it fall back to the commission, the Sustainability Commission, or?
Well, I hope if no one picked it up, with all due respect, I hope it would fall back to the city, because there is public interest.
Yeah.
And the event is certainly well attended, and there's $75,000 allocated to it. If no board or commission wants to carry that ball, I guess I'm struggling with why is this not a city-run event? And it sounds like it might be a resources issue. We don't have a volunteer coordinator.
Yeah, the city doesn't really run volunteer. I mean, I oversee the neighborhood rehab project. The city helps with that.
Right.
But the city doesn't, as far as I know, there are no city staff run volunteer events other than maybe internal city, for people on staff or something like that. But I can't think of any public facing events that city staff runs. That's something we could consider, and like city council should consider in the future, is hiring a volunteer coordinator to run different programs like that, but we just don't have a place for it.
Who runs the block party?
That would be Tony. But she's got a full schedule. She's got the whole year already planned out. So I don't know that we're going to be able to just say, the commission doesn't want to do it. Tony's, it's on Tony now,
So if we picked it up in 2022, continued to host hazardous waste, leaf recycling, with the expectation that we would have volunteer support from the city. Michael, you have a question. Is that an area that we could land on so that the city could plan if we want to drop that in 2023?
I'm just going based off a conversation I had with the assistant city manager, Tim Dodd, and he said that we would have volunteers available to help. He said that it really, you all shouldn't feel like it's only you. I think I heard last year, it was COVID and it just seemed a little bit stressful. Hopefully that's not the case going forward, but we do have, Tony should have some volunteers ready to kind of at least pick from and help. And I would be more than happy to also help kind of recruit volunteers as well. I think that 100% falls under my purview too, so.
Thank you, Mel. Real quick, Mike, you have your hand raised, and then see.
Yeah, what would happen if everybody on the commission said, we think it's a great idea, but we can't volunteer. We're out of town. That's pretty much what we ran into. And by association, I think it's implied and expected that part of the responsibility of being on the commission is volunteering at these events. I've volunteered, I've done it, I will continue. I don't like it. We are ipso facto being corralled into being volunteers. And I've heard for the last 3 years, there's going to be volunteer help from the city and Tony and everybody else. I haven't seen it. So it rankles me. I will continue to support it, but it's not right. It's just not right. If the city wants to pay for it, they should. I think it's a good project. I think there should be a volunteer program in Englewood that supports these programs.
Yeah, and I think that's justifiably so. I mean, I did just start, so I can't speak on the past years, but I can understand the frustration if you're told that you're gonna get support and haven't seen it. I really would do my due diligence to help and get those volunteers, and I think that is the expectation going forward. So if you did say yes, and say no one could make it, I would hope that we would be good going forward, but there shouldn't be any voluntold, there shouldn't be any, stronghold going forward. Really, this is just, does the commission approve of utilizing these funds for this event? It shouldn't secure really anyone to be forced to come to these events. Although if you want to market it to your neighbors, that would be great.
My question was, if we say no, the funds go into another decision bucket that's not under our purview anymore. We can't reallocate it to any other purpose.
Yeah, so.
And the events are at risk, right?
Yes.
That's
Yeah.
my understanding.
It's not like we
Mhm.
free up that money to do other things
Right.
that we're more passionate about. Is this the money we want to spend or no?
Right, because council approved of that large sum, expecting it for the hazardous waste event. And for Littleton too, because that 30,000 that you see goes back into the fund that's expected, that's Littleton giving back the money that they owe for that event.
Okay.
I would just add that if the commission said was to send a message to council that we like the event, but we think there's another event that would be a better use of the funds, then it would be possible for council to do a supplemental appropriation to reallocate those funds to another project and put it back. Like, I don't think it's 100% off the table.
You can't assume it
Right.
as a guarantee.
Right, but I don't know. When I see something like this, where it's like the chance to go back and reevaluate, should we do what we've always done? That excites me, because do we, I mean, I think these are both really good events. Are they the best events for the Sustainability Commission? I have questions about that. I don't know.
Does Littleton put in any volunteers or just money?
Did they have volunteers last year, do you know?
They had a city staff.
Just
Once.
staff.
Oh my God, absolutely not.
I mean, to Michael's point, both Michael and I've seen Rachel, I've worked double shifts at both leaf recycling and hazardous waste. Just wanted to put that into the record. So I think volunteer support would be immensely helpful. That said, can we come to a voting item on, would we like to retain the event, let's say for 2022? And can we agree on that? Is this something we can have another discussion on next year? Should we have a larger conversation at a future meeting? I think for this, to allow the city to plan appropriately. I would entertain the idea to retain it for this year. I'll just say that and open it up for conversation.
Can I ask, I'm sorry, a quick question?
Rachel.
Joe, is it possible if they wanted to say retain it this year, but then possibly pass the baton to someone next year? Is that a possibility?
Absolutely, yeah.
So then that would just kind of go to the budget for 2023 to be like, we would like to move this?
Yeah, or we would appropriate the money in a different way or something like that. I think it would be really important to, by the budget cycle, have, resolution to send council that we want to do this event that costs, some amount next year so that we can budget for that appropriately. And we're getting close to, starting the budget process again.
Agreed. Rachel, you had a question, thought?
No, I was gonna agree with you, Logan. I think they're really great events, so I'd really hate to see them not happen. So I think let's kind of use this next year as a planning. Let's see how it goes, see if we can kind of pivot. So just echoing what you said.
What was I gonna say? I wonder if we could, so you said the reason Tony can't put it into events is because she's already planned out that year. So in theory, we could do it this year and get it to her in advance so she could add it into her
I think that's, I don't want to speak for Tony
Totally
or
understand.
the department.
Hypothetically speaking.
Hypothetically
Hypothetically
speaking.
speaking.
So Michael, last thought, and
I don't want to drop the ball. I think they're great events, but I'm sorry. We're talking about maybe 4 volunteers to help us out. We're not talking 40. And I have a hard time believing that Tony can't figure out a way to get 3 or 4 people to help us on these 2 events coming up. So I want to continue it. They're great events. I have no problem volunteering, but I'd sure like some help. And I think as long as we continue doing it the way we've always done it, it's not going to change. And I'd like to task or challenge the volunteer program in Englewood that we need 2 volunteers. There's 2 days for each of those events. And we need 2 volunteers above and beyond the people on the commission.
Michael, what I can do is I can follow up with Tony as early as tomorrow.
Okay.
Put this on her radar, get feedback from her, and then put it in a follow-up email to you all, hopefully no later than next week.
Okay.
And 2 other thoughts I had. If we're doing it with Englewood, couldn't we almost demand that they send us X number of warm bodies to volunteer? Like, if you want to do this with us, we need some manpower here. Chip in with that too.
I think that's a conversation we could have with Tony.
I find that
Littleton, are
very,
you talking about Littleton?
Oh, I'm sorry, Christine.
Yeah, with Littleton.
I don't know
I personally find that very fair if they're getting a benefit from it to do that. I think actually someone from the Littleton staff had reached out to me asking when the event is, and I think that's their point person, and I'm contacting them tomorrow to tell them the outcomes of today. And I can vocalize that to him, just being like, how many volunteers could you promise us for this event?
And if not, we could see if Sheridan would want to partner on it or something, or all 3 cities together, if that would reduce the cost for everyone. I'm not sure.
So the only caveat too, so if this is approved, then we have to go to bid to get the company to come and do the hazardous waste. I think it is a little bit of a process, and then you put a date, so it kind of is a little bit of a draw. If we did bring in Sheridan, I think that's just an extra middle step to kind of draw that out, and I just don't know how that would go. It could go smooth, I have just no idea.
I would, just on the, I would love to see the commission super excited to volunteer for whatever events we do. And one of the things we can, like, if it doesn't sound like this has been an event that's been celebrated. Volunteer events I lead. I like to have beers at the end of the day with everybody and pay for them. If there's money in the budget
That
for
is
this,
what I'm talking about,
we need
Joe.
to go out and do the work,
We need a carrot.
work together, and then play together. Like, you got to celebrate these things so that you want to do it again next year. And if that's not happening and everybody's coming back in, grumpy after the event, then we're not doing it right.
Yeah.
So if there's money, if we can take some of that money, if there's money left over after we get the bid and fund a little celebration afterwards, I think that would be really good for everybody who volunteers. I would even show up if there was.
Joe.
What? I'm putting that down on record.
And you too. You guys can hang out too. Yeah. It is a good little workout, both events. Well, no, hazardous waste is just, leaf recycling is a good workout.
And maybe also by next year, we could look at how other cities do it.
I think we can. I think just with us questioning the status quo should raise enough, and I would hope would raise enough concern to Tony and perhaps the city, whoever coordinates volunteers, that, hey, this is sort of our cry for help and we can't continue on with the status quo. Please help us. And I think that this is an opportunity for them to show us what resources they can support us with. So with that, we're 7 till 8. I'd like to vote on this. If anyone would, I would entertain a motion to retain hazardous waste event for 2022 with the expectation that we would have volunteer support and reassess a post-event commission meeting to debrief and discuss posting in 2023.
I second.
All in favor of a motion to retain for 2022? Say aye.
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 All opposed, nay. Okay, unanimous support to host the event this year. Thank you for the
Hazardous waste
conversation.
and leaf litter?
Was it both or just hazardous?
both.
Is it both? That's, okay, should we vote on?
Leaf litter is about
recycling?
only like 1,500 of that budget. But also, I mean, it's still an event that you definitely,
For clerical reasons, do we need to revote, or can you make the edits to include both leaf recycling and hazardous waste?
yes. Yeah.
So it's both, good. Into the record. Okay.
Everybody agrees that that's what they just
Yes,
voted.
we all agree.
Super fast question, but
Yes.
is the hazardous waste event,
So, did you say when is it?
when it is?
So it hasn't been decided yet because it's gonna go to bid and then we get to decide the dates from there. I think in the years past, it was in September. So it probably would stay kind of around that timeline.
Do we do any education ahead of time and remind people why we don't want those things flushed down toilets or put in garbage cans?
I'm not sure if Kate, you did that before, but I think that's a phenomenal.
Well, I don't believe so. That's where I'd like to really get involved. How can we enhance public outreach and public education and raise awareness for these events? And the importance of the events. The community knows, they're highly attended. But I think we can do better. We can always do better, always be improving. So we can bring that up at some future meetings before both events. Okay, good. Check, one. That's one of three. We have an annual reporting update. We discussed this last month. I think the conclusion where we ended was we wanted to be reporting in December. There's been some back and forth with Mel and the city, and I think the conclusion those conversations came to was that the Sustainability Commission needs to be on the same reporting timeline as others. And if I can recall correctly, I don't remember too many convincing arguments not to report in January.
Yeah, so the one, I'll just chime in just for 2 seconds.
Please,
I know
take
at the last meeting, someone had brought up maybe doing December, but if we did do the December one, we wouldn't have a report at all for this upcoming city council meeting in June, which every department is gonna go present on updates. Why we're kind of doing it in April is the strategic plan got updated. Our timeline is a little funky for this year, but 2023, that report will be done in January. It's going to go back to a normal one. So this is kind of the anomaly, but we just don't want to be the only ones not having a report with all the other divisions. So that's why we're having it.
Any further discussion? I know we had a 15, 20-minute chat last month. Is there any opposition to reporting in January to be in sync with other city departments? I'm getting thumbs up and head nods. Okay, I would entertain a motion to approve, how can I word this, Mel? Approve a January annual reporting.
So it's not, I'm sorry, it's
No,
not
please.
approving of the January, it's just approving of the sustainability report that was sent out, because there is a section
Oh, I see.
on the commission. Do you all
Yeah.
agree with that? Is there any changes you want to make in that?
Okay, I don't mean to expedite that if we need to have a
Oh my gosh,
conversation.
no, you're good, you're good. But that is,
Did you want to go
hopefully
over the sustainability report?
Sure, yeah, did everyone get a chance to see it? Did anyone have any, initial questions from it? Sorry, let
I
me.
took a look and I just want to say you can tell you guys put a lot of time and thought into it. So I appreciate that. And I thought it looked fantastic.
Oh, thank you. The
Second.
communications team is just rock star at Englewood, honestly.
They do good work.
Sorry, let me try. Share my screen for this.
I had a couple comments on it too, or suggestions when you're up there. Got it up? But I agree, it looked awesome.
Share, oh. Sorry, I'm like my mom, I'm just like not that tech savvy. All right, can everybody see that?
Yes.
Perfect.
very on brand with Englewood, if I can know.
I
I like that. That looks really nice. Okay, it's 7:59, just to preface this part of the agenda. Ideally, we'd have a bylaws discussion after this, and then we'd be able to talk June content. Let's see where we're at. After Mel gives a quick run through of the sustainability report, we can take a vote. And then I think there's a few items we just need to vote on in the bylaws. And we'll see where we're at that point. I just wanted to preface, let's be succinct. Go ahead, please.
So I am going to assume that everyone read it. If not, just let me know, just to be time efficient and not to beat a dead horse. So the main thing I think you all should just be focused on is that KEB section for the report. If it's up to your liking, is there anything that you see that stands out to you as a negative? And we can kind of go from there.
The KEB part seemed great. Almost all of it seemed great. I had a couple thoughts on the 2021 accomplishments. You did a really good job of framing that it's kind of a plan in transition.
Yeah.
A year in transition and finding what we did do despite not being a full sustainability commission for most of the time. So 6 projects completed in 2021. That was the part I was looking at. It looked like 2 of them were kind of repetitive, reduced the use of glyphosate in parks and open space. Yeah, number 4 and number 6 seemed repetitive. And I heard a public comment that maybe in the future we should be looking at exactly what that means, and that maybe there's some concern that pre-emergent are maybe equally bad as classified. So I guess that's not necessarily a change to this document, but something we keep in mind for the future, as well as fleshing out how those were reduced. Like, is it extra manual labor, or is it just substituting one herbicide for another herbicide or something like that? So I don't know, but besides just maybe combining 4 and 6 somehow, because those seem duplicative.
So with the 4 and 6, I think they're, because I do agree, I can see the overlap. I think they're separated because they were listed as 2 separate projects in the original plan. So technically we accomplished 2 different projects for that one, which is why they're separate.
Maybe it needs reworded to say what the difference is.
I think in the new plan that might be reworded. I don't have the new plan super memorized yet, but I think that might be, I'm working on it. But I think that is whittled down, but this is just a report on the old plan.
That makes sense. Mm-hmm. It still reads like a editorial oversight almost, like one forgot what 4 said and wrote it under 6 or something like that, without maybe rewording it for what exactly the difference is between the 2. If that's possible to change.
Just putting 6 under 4 instead.
Or clarifying how they're different, I guess.
Okay, yeah.
I would either combine them or reword them to show how they're different.
Mike?
Yeah, I'm wondering, under 3, where it says plant flower beds and attract pollinators, et cetera, I don't see any mention of natural grasses, natural pollinators. I think the one project that got off the ground last year was a good step in the right direction. I think if there's ever an opportunity to expand natural pollinator, low water grasses in the landscaping plans of the city, we should take advantage of that. So I wish it were mentioned in here, in that we believe in it, we think it's a good thing, and there might be opportunities to experiment and expand those natural grasses in Englewood.
And to add on that, flowers and plants that are perennials, not just annuals, as a way to reduce the cost and maintenance and all those things going along with it.
Did you get Mike's request started?
emphasize pollinators, correct?
Mike, can you repeat your request on the wording? Was it just a mention of natural grass and pollinators to make sure that that's a priority for this commission?
Yeah, I think the Sustainability Commission is supportive of that approach. And like I said, I think we should say so. And I think there could be opportunities, as we look at trees that are being cut down, reforesting going on in the parks. There could be corners or places in the parks of Englewood where there'd be perfect opportunity for small or extended pollinator gardens. So I just think we should talk about it. It should be in there, and we should say if there's an opportunity, we support it. So without having a specific project in mind, I think the range of pollinator possibilities should include native grasses. It is not talked about in this report.
Can that go under 2022 and beyond, or where would that be slotted?
Yeah,
Number three could be expanded to say this includes, because there are situations where traditional flower beds won't work. And I also think we ought to be paying attention to the pollinator garden that is already in place. And again, volunteering, we should be over there nurturing it along, paying attention to it.
So that makes me wonder, can you call out Depot Park as something that is an accomplishment and also a work in progress? And
Yeah, we
or
might want to do another one.
or could we put in parentheses for number 3 or some of these others?
Yeah.
Being continued and approved upon in 2022?
Right.
Something like that?
Yes, and I also want to mention too, just because a project is listed as completed, doesn't mean it's not going to be continued to be worked on. It just means kind of like in 2021, we did kind of accomplish that project going forward. But I don't think we have any intentions on stopping progress in those.
Right.
Thank you, Mike.
Well, will it be mentioned is what I'm asking. Will it be included?
Yeah, I can definitely include Depot
Okay.
Park because that would encompass in 2021 because that happened in 2021. I can definitely add that in.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Mel.
Mm-hmm. And it's definitely something we want to express our support for.
Seconded.
That's awesome.
Any other thoughts?
A couple of things for 2022 maybe, unless there's anything else on 2021.
Go ahead, Christine.
It was the golf cart one, which I think is a good thing in general. Continue program began in 2010 to provide electric golf carts to golfers that broke into use. I thought maybe another sentence or two on some context, like, are they all electric already, or is only a small percentage of them electric already? Like, where are we starting from, or what did we accomplish there, or what goal? Does that make sense? I have no idea how
Yeah,
many
that
are
makes
electric
sense.
versus gas and how fast we're replacing them. So maybe 1 to 2 sentences there would be great.
Okay. Any next thought, Christine?
No, that's it.
Anything else from the group? Once again, nice work
Yes.
on this. Really want to express that.
Good job.
It's very clean. We have a couple suggested changes. Mel will work on those. With those changes, if there are no final thoughts, can we vote to approve the 2022 sustainability report? I would
Yes.
entertain a motion.
Second.
Seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Unanimous support.
Great, y'all.
How easy was that?
How easy was that?
Thank you all for making that conversation quick, and thank you for your thoughts and feedback. I think it's important. It's 8:08. I want to be cognizant of our guests' time, of our time, of Councilman Anderson's time, Mel's. Christine did take time to go through the bylaws and offer a few edits in addition to a few of the topics that we brought up last month. one on subcommittees and 2 on having alternate members. I would like to take a vote on that tonight. If we can get through this part of the agenda, I think we can move a sustainability update from Mel to next month, or maybe an email update if we can take it offline. Happy to have feedback on that. But let's go ahead and dive into the bylaws discussion. Who is running point on that? Is that?
I can go over I feel like I'm talking so much today, I'm so sorry. I can go over just this subcommittee. So this is a follow-up again from last time when everyone said in the commission, I believe everyone said that they wanted to have subcommittees be allowed in the bylaws, not necessarily that you guys have to go do it going forward. So I wrote up some verbiage. I passed it by our city attorney. She made some tweaks. So this is a city attorney approved wording that could go into your bylaws if you all vote to approve it.
This is an extension of last month's conversation. To keep it short, we agreed that having the ability to form subcommittees was a useful tool, even as Mel said, even if it's not something we use in the immediate future. It sounded like we had support for that last month. Are there any points of conversation here? I would entertain a motion to adopt bylaw verbiage approved by the city attorney to allow the Sustainability Commission to have subcommittees.
I second.
Seconded. Stephen? All those in favor? Aye.
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 All those opposed? Nay. Unanimous.
Agreeable sort tonight.
Do what?
We're an agreeable sort.
I like
It's
it.
because we
That's right.
read all the homework,
That's
that's
right. We had homework, we
why.
did it.
Yes.
I do want to make one pre-note before we go into Christine's edits. So the one is the alternate members that was passed by city attorney and that is allowed. And then all of Christine's edits were passed through our city attorney as well. They're all allowable.
Nice job, Christine.
So just to preface that.
Okay. Do we need to vote on alternates as well? Is that a change to the bylaws? Or is that
So
just
the
something-
alternates is part of Christine's edits. If
Okay.
you all do decide that you do want alternates, this is the same thing as subcommittees. Well, a little bit. City council does have to approve of your alternates. And the one caveat, if you looked at the BAC example, which I can pull up, is that you have to, I would write a memo if you all want to have alternates to city council. You have to state your issue or need of why you want that alternate. So we are a bigger commission. We are 9. A lot of other ones I believe are between 5 or 7. They're much smaller, correct?
There's a variety, but there are a number that are smaller.
But that doesn't mean you all can't have alternates. You could have kind of issues such as security of wanting to make quorum, anything like that. But you all can tell me if you decide to do alternates. I can make a list of what you would like to vocalize to city council, and I can put that memo together.
Mike, you have your hand raised. Do you have a question or is that just existing? You're also frozen.
A double whammy.
I think, if I recall correctly, bringing up the point of having alternates, we had issues with quorum, with KEB in years past. And having alternates obviously would be a tool to work around the lack of quorum. I don't see us having quorum as an issue with the Sustainability Commission. Does anyone have a counterpoint to
My thought
that?
in having alternates is that people's time comes and goes, and we saw already with one member that she had to bow out, and if we had an alternate in place, that alternate could just slip right in without having to wait half a year for the next round to come around, the next round of interviews.
Mel, do you want to speak to vacancies and how that process works? Where are we? I know we have 2, I believe.
So that is very valid. If someone leaves, you can't fill that spot until why am I blanking? Applications open again, and I believe that happens twice a year, so you could have about 6 months time of waiting. So there definitely is an issue need there too.
I don't think alternates move into regular membership until city council votes on that though, so they would still remain alternates even, I believe, even if they're vacancies, I'm not.
Jackie, so I've had so many conversations with poor Jackie.
You know better than me.
About alternates, and she said the positive is if, say you don't have quorum, you can call, if the alternate is there, they can fill in and meet quorum and actually be a voting member.
Oh, okay.
So they can help you meet that if you're kind of missing it.
They act as, if there's not a quorum, they fill in. But I don't
Yes.
think if there is a quorum without them, then I don't think they would vote
Yeah.
regardless.
Yeah.
That's helpful.
They would get all the materials and be abreast of everything going on, but yeah, you're absolutely correct. They wouldn't vote unless they're needed.
So when it says, this is in the alternates section number 4, and to fill unexpired term of any commission member vacancy, they're still not voting unless they're needed for quorum, even though they filled the position?
So if someone leaves, so say we just had a member leave, if we had an alternate, they could, I think if city council approves it, they could get bumped up to commission,
But not until city council.
but not until city council approves it.
We every time we do board and commission appointments, we almost always move somebody from alternate into vacant positions.
So they have right of first refusal.
They typically, as long as they have a letter of recommendation from the board chair.
As long as they have the in.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, that's helpful. I guess I see no real negative. I'm an easy sell.
Could I just make one
Please.
suggestion here? The only slight hang up I have, and this really isn't that big of a deal, but I think it's worth mentioning, is that we fairly regularly don't have enough candidates to fill all of the positions across all of our boards and commissions. And so I think you could add an alternate onto that. Another possibility, since we already have vacancies, is convert an existing seat into an alternate. Because that would help with potentially with the quorum. I'm not sure what the difference is in quorum between 8 and 9. I think maybe it would be.
Right.
What's required for quorum? 2/3, is it 2/3?
I thought it was 2/3.
So that would be 6 in both cases.
I guess my question would come in, if we're going down to 8, is a tie equivalent
That's
to a
true,
no
yeah,
vote?
sorry, yeah, you should have an odd number, thank you, yeah.
Okay, because I mean, for example, at council last night, it was on single hauler. If it's a tie, is the motion voted down?
Yeah, you can't pass anything without a majority.
But you need the majority. Okay.
So
we
yeah, you
wanna
should
avoid
stick with
that.
an odd number. That's, sorry, good thought.
I don't see much downside in having an alternate, and if there's not enough candidates to fill it, then we don't have an alternate.
Okay. Any further discussion? I would entertain a motion to support an alternate, please.
To support an alternate, okay.
I second.
2 seconds.
Rachel did.
Rachel seconded.
Did somebody make the motion?
I was opening the floor for a motion.
Oh, didn't Steven?
Oh, sure. I motion to add an alternate, to make it possible to have alternates.
I second.
Rachel seconded. We have a motion. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Good. Unanimous.
Well, we didn't hear from Michael, but he can just be absent.
Okay, can he be in? Yeah, we are well past 8 o'clock, so
Most of the rest of my edits were just edits, not contentious or substantive, but just cleaning up the language.
did you have an edit, Christine, to term limits?
Clarifying to be in line with the city code.
Okay, so,
Which says that each term is 2 years and you can have up to 3 terms. And so it just made those match with city code.
You want to move it along, you can have one motion for all the rest of the edits.
Say that
That's what I had up there.
Oh, it did, okay,
Yeah.
sorry, you're right. Okay.
Say that again, Counselor, I'm sorry.
It's a
Just what she
motion
had, the
to
motion.
accept, sorry, I'll pull it back up, I
Yep.
should have done that. The vote, does the committee accept all of Christine Brinker's suggested edits?
Is that, yes.
So we
Yes.
have a motion by Christine.
I move to approve.
Yeah, great, perfect.
Edits.
Need a second.
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 Christina.
From the drafter herself. All opposed, or all in favor, aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Unanimous support for Christine's amendments. Thank you, Christine, for putting the time in.
Yes.
Really
Yeah,
grateful,
thank you
grateful
so
for that.
much.
Very thoughtful. Is there any way we can move ideas? We're well beyond 8 o'clock. Can we work
You're
on?
sure? You got it.
I'd like to work, well, the question is, can we do like, for a speaker in June or content for June? Since I can't email the commission, is there any way we can do a poll or a survey or something where we can hear from the commission, not in a formal setting? Can we do that? Okay,
I can send
Yeah,
out.
Mel
Can you-
Present edible.
that'd be perfect. And I'll work with you on that one-on-one.
So,
Um,
sorry, I had a thought on,
Please,
real quick. So Stephanie Ellis, I've worked with her in the past. She's wonderful. And I know she's offered to give, or they do tours to the public for like the water plant and stuff. So I kind of really like the idea of her and then seeing if we could do like a tour before the next meeting. That way we have some like kind of ideas about questions and stuff.
I also had Stephanie Ellis high on my list.
Okay.
I love that. We've heard from Steve Simon in the past as well, but Stephanie, I would love to. Can we?
And Stephanie has offered too, and this would give you a chance to hear about the plan before it goes to public comment, just because they're presenting to the Water and Sewer Board. But it's completely up to you all if you want her there, if you don't.
What are they presenting? When?
So they're presenting to the Sewer and Water Board. Ooh, I'm not sure, but I can double check.
I mean, could we hear from her the second Tuesday of June before they?
The Water and Sewer Board meets right before this meeting. So
Okay.
you won't, yeah, there's no way you'll hear from her if she's doing the next meeting in June.
Well, I wonder if we could organize a tour, if we could work with her on a tour. Sort of, Rachel,
I can take lead on that if you want.
similar to what we did with the Depot Park in 2021, just an offline tour so we can go see and hear from Stephanie. I think it's a great idea. Let's put that down. Mel, if you'll take note, and Rachel, if you would like to reach out to Stephanie, that'd be a great entry point.
Okay. And I can circulate kind of what you said about survey to see what times and days work best for everybody and her as well.
I love it.
So that's an informal tour. Is that also for our June agenda as a speaker? Or do we still need a June speaker?
We would still need
Well, if
to.
you approve of Stephanie Ellis being the speaker, she would be it. Unless you don't want her, then she would be.
I guess, how would we, if we did an informal tour of the plant, would that suffice for us? Would that be an appropriate venue for us to ask questions of her? We could probably set that into the agenda with her, and then we could,
Does that go with open meeting law though? Don't we have to make this pretty public to everyone for a meeting?
It would have to be posted.
Post it, okay,
Yeah,
but it wouldn't
we
have to
could-
be like hybrid and kind of like online.
No,
Okay.
well, I don't think so. If you just called it a workshop or something like that.
workshop, okay.
I can follow up on that too.
Yeah, and maybe just one-on-one with Rachel, and y'all coordinate and sort of let us know how we can, when and where to be. I love the idea. I don't know if that answered your question.
It didn't, but I'm fine if that ends up being the speaker for June. I think that's great. And I
Okay.
think a couple others that I was brainstorming for maybe having on deck in the future would be the Soul Smart, because that'll be really cool to hear about what it entails, what you've learned, what we can do.
Totally.
And I was thinking in our discussion, it might be nice to have Depot Park or pollinators or native plants or something all around that subject as a guest speaker, and follow that up with brainstorming how we could help that along in the city and maybe reduce the $80,000 annual annual budget, flowers budget. So that could be another topic. But not for June, because that'd be too much.
Okay. I'm keeping, for the record, I keep a running list of any ideas pitched for content and speakers. So I'm happy to work with Mel offline. We can put together a survey or a poll and just see where interest lies. But I would love to entertain a tour with Stephanie to start. So if Mel and Rachel can work on that, great. I would entertain a motion to adjourn for the evening.
Can I?
No,
Sorry.
please.
I don't know, I feel like if you guys have a couple minutes, I wanted to talk a little bit about the single hauler thing, because I don't know if all of you somebody saw the meeting last night where.
I've got a couple minutes.
Yes, okay. Well, I just felt like I owed the commission an explanation since I did.
It's a good thought.
I was on the side of not moving forward with single hauler. And the main reason for that was because nobody was okay with moving forward on count of the 6 there last night with moving forward with the 2 proposals we have, just because the price was too high for the service level. One of my suggestions was that we take the recommendations from the single hauler trash committee and try to pull out some of the cost drivers. The biggest cost driver is running trucks up and down both streets and alleys, which is something the committee wanted. And I don't think we're going to get a price any better. And very well, we could, if we went back to bid, it would be a higher price than the 2 proposals we have now, just because gas has gone up, inflation's up, everything's more expensive than it was when we got these bids. And so without having that discussion, I didn't want to put staff through another round of putting out RFPs and frankly, another round of long meetings. So I thought it's best to just rip the Band-Aid off, because I don't think it's going anywhere at this time, leaving the option open in the future when the economy is doing better to come back and take another go at it. But for now, no single hauler in Eagle. My apologies, because I know it was a disappointment to me, certainly a disappointment to the many people in the steering committee and staff and this commission who put many, many hours over it and into it over the last 3 years. So it's a sad move, but I think the only one I could, I felt good with my conscience on last night, so.
Were those the 2 sides? Was it a no vote and then a vote to reopen another RFP?
This was not a vote, since it was a study session. It was just trying to come to a consensus. And Cheryl wasn't there, so we were down, very well could have moved forward to another round of bidding, which, long shot kind of a thing. So if Cheryl would have been there, frankly, I don't think it would have come out favorable anyway. So I think it's probably best to put it in the rearview mirror at this point, so.
Thank you, Councilman.
I watched the meeting and I wanted to say how impressed I was that the council was so thoughtful about going through it and no rash decisions. You could tell that you all, tried to leave no stone unturned to see, is there a way we could make it work? And it just would not pencil out. So I thought that was a really impressive effort, and hopefully the rest of the community saw what I saw, which is that you guys really care about it, that you didn't make any just rash decisions, and did your best to make it work.
It was one of them, and it was a more disappointing of my nights on city council is to walk away saying, we can't do something that I think a majority of council actually wants to do, but it just didn't, the numbers didn't pencil out. And so it's a sad thing.
Just real quick, any final comments from our guests tonight? Online, Andrew, Jay, either in the room, anything we can do for you as we can be a resource? If not, follow up with either of us, please. Sure. Yeah, glad to have you all here tonight. Thank you.
Thanks for letting us join. I'm brand new to Englund, so I'm learning.
Welcome.
Yeah, welcome for sure. That's exciting.
And applications will be open and coming in the future for openings.
Anytime now, they may be open now. I don't know.
I think they're open now.
For the commission, yeah, they're open now.
Yeah.
If you need a link, we have two open spots. Thank you for that. Closing comments. Motion to adjourn.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you for joining us online, guys.
Aye.
Thanks for hanging in there.
Thanks,
Gang.
everybody.
Appreciate it. That was a long one, but thank you.
Bye.
Now.